Welcome to the Startup Grind.
It's great to be back. Welcome to Startup Grind. This is your first, James, I think?
First, yeah.
Okay. So, can you guys hear me in the back? Okay. I'm not reading my email or my tweets. I'm reading my questions. So, James, you don't speak much. You actually stay back at Fitbit working on great products. Just tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, so Fitbit's the third company that I've started. The last one was a small company called Wind Up Labs that we ended up selling to CNET in 2005, and my partner Eric and I were in Boston at the time, so CNET shipped us all out to San Francisco, which is how I ended up here in the Bay Area. And I'd actually been planning on returning back to Boston, but...
Don't.
Yeah.
It's cold out there.
Yeah, cold, and at the time it was pretty dead in Texas. So we were locked up at CNET for a couple of years, and by the end, we knew this was where we wanted to stay. And by the end of our lockup period, we were looking for new ideas.
And the new idea was Fitbit. So tell us about the genesis and why you chose to come up with this concept of a connected pedometer, which is what you pitched me on back in June 2008. Because at the time, quantified self didn't exist, wellness was ignored, and pedometers were sort of clunky old devices, sort of plastic.
Yeah, so Eric and I were looking for new ideas, and before what we did was actually a piece of desktop software. It was peer-to-peer photo editing organization, and we had a lot of trouble getting our software to work on different machines, different configurations, different phone networks. So we said, we hate desktop software, it's too hard. So the next company we do, it's not going to have all these complications. Ultimately, we ended up doing something that not only involves desktop software, but hardware, every other thing you can think of. But in late 2006, I was one of the first people to buy Nintendo Wii, and I waited at Best Buy at 6 a.m. My wife was a great sport, she was video games. And I was just really fascinated by the way Nintendo had combined sensors and really amazing software and changed the way people thought about gaming. It became something that was very active and positive rather than sedentary. And the two pieces of technology that really enabled it were MEMS accelerometers, motion sensors, and Bluetooth as well. And Eric and I thought, how could we capture a lot of this magic and put it into more portable form? And at the time, there were really two classes of fitness devices. One were cheap pedometers that you could buy at drugstores for $5 to $20. They were mostly unconnected. The most sophisticated ones you could buy for $25, and you had a USB port and some really crappy desktop software. And on the very high end, you had environmental controllers, GPS watches, heart monitors, etc.
$300, $400?
Yeah, $200 to $300 typically, maybe even more. And there's nothing really in the middle. People say the middle is kind of a dangerous place, but really there's nothing in the middle that took a lot of the sophisticated sensor and wireless technology and packaged it in a form that made it available to the average consumer. So we were not only enamored with the technological and product aspect of the business.
So you started building prototypes, you sort of raised a little bit of sort of angel funding, and then you decided that this was sort of the thing you're going to go do for real, and you raised your seed round. So can you tell us about that process and how hard it was to raise a seed round back in 2008, in the dark ages of hardware?
Yeah, so Eric and I started a company May 2007. We were for 7 years. Our first round was about $400K. And that was really quick because half of it was from Eric and myself, and half of it was from investors in the last company. So we didn't really want to spend a lot of time fundraising. We actually...
And I had nothing at the time.
We had nothing. Maybe I had a couple slides. Maybe not even, because actually it was like Eric's father, grandfather, my boss, my former boss at CNET.
What you call the friends and the family.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So that took a day, and actually Eric's father was pretty skeptical of the whole idea because he was a professor at CMU in biomedical devices, and he said, it's not accurate, no one's going to buy that. What's the purpose of this? But Eric and I kind of did. I think he'll
Still give you the money.
He did. I think he'll do well. But that was a really quick round, and we naively thought that we could actually get product to market on $400K. And yeah, a year later, we realized we're probably, well, not probably, we're not that close at all. So we decided to raise a larger round, in the way of $2 million.
And then you get on stage at TechCrunch 40, 50 at the time? 50, September 2008. Awesome reception. People really sort of love the concept. You have Kevin Rose, Ev Williams saying, I absolutely want this now. You are second of TechCrunch 50 that year. And then you think that you're going to launch in Christmas 2008. And then what happens?
Yeah, so going back to the previous question, it actually, right around that time period at TechCrunch 50, which was August, September 2008, we were in the midst of fundraising. And actually, we had talked to, 20 or 30 different people and funds, and actually, it was both you and True Ventures that came in at the very end. I think True Ventures was literally the last fund to talk to in that whole period. And we ended up all of us closing pretty much around TechCrunch 50. When we got on stage, Eric and I were, we had a prototype up and running, very rudimentary website, and we're always very realistic people. And Eric said, "Yeah, we don't have that much. Our website is pretty bare bones. I don't think there's going to be more than 5 people who are stupid enough to give us a credit card information, because literally we had maybe 3 paragraphs of information about the product." And I said, "Eric, you're being too pessimistic. I think there'll be about 15 people." So we got on stage, Ev Williams was there, Kevin Rose was judging. The demo was fantastic. I was actually really shocked by the difference in reception that we got from the audience versus investors. Like most investors just snooze pretty much the presentation, but the audience reception is fantastic. I thought, where were all these people 2 or 3 months ago? And we got off stage, and by the end of the day, we had about 2,000 pre-orders. So, we were obviously really happy and knew we were onto something. We did announce on stage that we were going to ship at Christmas, but we didn't say which year. So we left ourselves.
Though the assumption was that it was that Christmas, not the other Christmas.
One would think, yes.
And so you get 2,000 pre-orders, a lot of great press, and then you get into the manufacturing value of that, because it took us a year to ship. So can you give us a sense of what happened, why it happened, and how it felt to sort of write those emails and blog posts about explaining, hey, we're kind of late again?
So, on stage, what we had was literally a circuit board and a balsam box that Eric had cut and glued up the night before. So that was kind of the stage. We told people, I guess, not directly, but Christmas implied Christmas of that year. So we probably had 3 months if we were going to meet a deadline. Obviously, in hindsight, that was absolutely unrealistic. There were a lot of challenges to manufacturing. One was we had no experience other than a digital circuit design class I took in college. That was the extent of our experience. So it really took us a few months just to find the right manufacturer. And Eric and I spent a lot of time in Asia. Once we had selected a manufacturer, working with them throughout the next year. So we probably individually spent about 3 months in Asia, finding suppliers, bringing up the production lines, pretty much every aspect. And it wasn't very easy. And in fact, a lot of times we were pretty close to being dead. I remember we were a couple months before the following Christmas. I was in a hotel room and we were testing the radio range of the product. And it was literally maybe 2 inches. And yeah, we promised about 25 feet. So Eric and I, we probably have a list of 7 times in the company where we're close to death. I don't think I told you in 7 instances. I think that might have been number 2. Number 1 was we almost ran out of cash before we did a quick bridge round. I called John at True Ventures up and said, well, we're going to be a little late. We need some more cash. Can you guys help us out? And that was actually really quick. And True helped a lot. But yeah, that in my hotel room, I was thinking, yeah, this is it. We're done. But what it turned out is, the cable for the display was actually too close to the antenna when we actually started assembling products. And all it took was we literally took a piece of foam, glued it to the circuit board, and it pushed the cable away from the antenna enough that we got good range. So that was a last-minute hack in production.
And so you made it to the production lines and you launched Christmas 2009. You had some challenges to convince investors that you were real. So, we worked on that together and we managed to get Foundry to put in 90 million, but it wasn't easy. And then Fitbit took off. In hindsight, what are the 2 or 3 things that made this happen and essentially got Fitbit to the point it has today?
One, I think it just started with the product. It was the right product at the right time, the right price point. And we could tell that by the number of pre-orders we received. And today, the analogy is Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can get market validation, announce your product, Kickstarter, and go. By the end of 2009, we had about 25 to 30,000 pre-orders. So we knew that, we didn't know whether this was like a billion-dollar company, but we knew that, this was going to do pretty well. That first year, we ended up shipping about 5,000 units. That's as many as we could produce. But we were always getting a ton of pre-orders. So I think it started with the product. It was the right product.
And the pre-orders, you were capturing them on the website. There was no distribution.
Yeah, this was all direct. So, these tens of thousands of pre-orders, the margin was pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't pay anything to channel partners, other than their credit card processing fees and the cost of the product. And we're a very small company, maybe 12 people. We're doing really well. That said, it was still hard to convince investors to come into the product. And we could say we had 25,000 pre-orders. We shipped 5,000 of them already. Right? We at least solved the initial stage of manufacturing ramp up. Look, we need money. But I think that round, we talked to about 30 investors. And we're at the very end, and I think I came and visited you and said, hey, did you talk to Brad? I said, yeah, I talked to Brad the last round, but I'm not sure where he was at. And you just sent him an email. Brad said, yeah, we'll take the second round. Yeah. He was literally the last person we talked to.
Essentially, the email was, and Brad Feld is a good friend and a mentor of mine, and I basically said, if I have any credibility with you as an investor, please take another look at Fitbit, because this is a multi-billion-dollar company in the making. It's just not that obvious yet. And so I wrote this sort of long-ass email that I still have, which I read the other day. And basically, I begged him to take another look, and I think Brad said, okay, we didn't like it last time, but we like you, so we'll take another look. And I think that they looked at it and they spent a couple of months in the agent, and finally, they let that money all around.
Yeah, and we talked to, again, 30 investors, and this process kind of replicated itself each round. So now I suspect that 2/3 of the problem is me. Because I read all these things now about fundraising.
I'm an awesome product guy. I suck at fundraising. James Spark.
So now I find it better that we have actual numbers. That I just let the numbers decide.
So fast forward, 2014, wellness is a super important market. Quantified self, everyone talks about it. Even mighty Apple is talking about putting, more into iOS, doing what and so forth. People don't really have a good sense of how big Fitbit is, and so I've been trying to get James to share some numbers. He doesn't want to, but there are some public numbers that we found, and so give us a sense of where we are versus the competition. So you have Fitbit, you have Jawbone, you have Nike Fuel Band, a bunch of others. Let's have some numbers.
Yeah, so I'll start with a range of numbers. So right now, we're the number 2 downloaded app in health and fitness in iTunes, which is incredible because you actually have to buy a $100 device to make use of the app. During Christmas, we were in the top 20 of all free app downloads in iTunes. That's across every category. And there's this research outfit called NPD, which tracks retail point of sales data in North America. And over the holidays, we had a 77% market share in the category. So that left about 23% for Jawbone, Nike, Wildings, Polar, Garmin.
So Fitbit is 3 times larger than the rest of the competition combined. Not bad. Another number? Like if you combine all the risks of...
Yeah, so that 77% is for what NPD calls full body activity tracker. So that's us, the Fuel Band, Wildings, Pulse, etc. They also cover a category called digital fitness, which includes GPS watches, heart rate monitors, etc. And even in that larger category, we have a 50% market share. So if you think about Garmin, Polar, Suunto, kind of the original mainstays and pillars of that category, and literally, in the course of several years, we've come in and taken a majority share of it.
So when it comes to digital fitness, this is the elephant in the room, which is kind of remarkable when you think that Nike is spending millions of dollars in marketing to promote the Fuel Band and Fuel Points and so forth, and they're at mere 9%, if I recall.
Somewhere, I don't want to know. Yeah.
So, it's kind of pretty shocking to me because we still don't do much in terms of marketing, right? I've been sort of saying, hey, should we try to market this product?
In fact, 2 years ago, I think at South by Southwest, Nike spent more at South by Southwest than our entire annual marketing budget for maybe 2 years combined.
So we have a marketing budget. It's good to actually say. You don't think that TV advertising would be good? You don't think that something like that would actually try and push the product?
TV definitely helps. It requires a lot of money to make an impact, so it's not something that it hasn't been an option in the past, but it might be in the future.
Cool. So when you hear, especially given that footprint that we have today, when you hear people saying, well, the watch is going to take over the wrists, and whatever you have in a Fitbit is going to end up in an Apple Watch or Samsung Watch, whatever. What do you think, and how do you market your product to just say, well, this is actually different? For me, this is actually more sort of a piece of jewelry than anything. And if you look at the Samsung Watch, it's pretty ugly. So I'm not sure that people want that.
Yeah, so I think the key difference in wearables versus, let's say, smartphones is that in my opinion, there won't be a one-size-fits-all dominant SKU, like the iPhone or the Galaxy S4. Just because, there's a lot of factors in people choosing a wearable device. It could be price, it could be form factor, fashion, functionality, wearability. So at Fitbit, we've taken a very multi-SKU strategy. We're somewhere between, an Apple, which has, the iPhone 5S and 5C, and a Swatch, which might have 50,000 SKUs. We're probably somewhere in the middle. But I think you have to have a pretty diverse product lineup to really capture broad swaths of the market. I think that's the key distinction.
So you have sort of the Zip, you have the One, you have the Flex, you have the Force, and you have the Aria, which is the Scale. Any product announcement or anything you want to share?
We're always working on new stuff.
You won't say anything. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the world of entrepreneurship for hardware. Any of you sort of building a hardware startup? You're crazy. So, the world has changed for hardware entrepreneurs. You have a lot of resources available to you. Kickstarter, go to test, even you have hardware accelerators. I'd like to go down on two sort of sets of thoughts. One is knowing what you know now. What have you done? What would you have done differently with Fitbit? And if you were starting fresh today, how would you go about it? Not that we want to tell these guys how to compete with you, but how, as a normal entrepreneur, you go about getting started?
Now I think there's a lot more resources and experts to help you out. In 2007, when we started the company, there was literally no public information on how to make hardware. A lot of it was just trade secrets trapped away in the bowels of companies like Nokia, Apple, Garmin, etc. And really the key to the success in hardware is access to information. Information about the best suppliers, the best processes, just knowledge and expertise accumulated over the years is really some of the most valuable things you can get in hardware. And we had access to none of that. So the thing that we spent the most time on was gaining access to that knowledge, either through people, design firms, etc. So I think the advantage today is there's a lot more open information, people who are at least publicly touting their ability to help you out in terms of building hardware. The second is market validation as well. I think Kickstarter makes it really easy to raise funds, and that's definitely something, it's a no-brainer to do today. It probably saves you 1 or 2 rounds of dilution as an entrepreneur. And I really wish that option was available to us. That said, though, very early on, Eric and I were actually nervous about charging people's credit cards because we didn't know quite what we were going to ship. So we had a model where we took people's credit card information, but we told people we wouldn't charge the card until we ship. I think Kickstarter kind of makes that process of taking people's funds more legitimate, but at the time, ethically we were a little uncomfortable doing that. So I think now that the process of getting money upfront and early definitely obviously helps a lot. That said, though, even if you have the best experts, they're not as passionate as you will be. So you can't just fire and forget and let these people try, run on their own. You still have to be heavily involved in all the details because in hardware, any single mistake is incredibly expensive and it takes a long time to fix it. So for instance, if you make a mistake in tooling, a new tool might take 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks to create. So every mistake you make could set you back months. So you do need to have involve yourself in details.
So, as you said, when you guys got on this journey, you had no clue on the manufacturing side. And when I funded you, I had no clue that you actually needed to have those kinds of skill sets, which is why it took so long to get the product out. What is the ideal combination of skills for a founding team doing a hardware company? What would you, if you were in my shoes, what would you see?
This is more of a mushy skill, but ability to learn things very quickly and absolute commitment. Eric and I were committed to the point that if we needed to live a year in Singapore and Indonesia, we would have done that. And Indonesian factories have incredibly terrible toilets too, so it's not a place that you'd want to spend a long time in. I mean, literally, you'd walk in, there's no toilet paper. A little caught off guard, and the toilet paper was actually locked away by the reception area because they didn't want the workers making off the toilet paper. So first, you got to find the toilet paper, and then flushing is basically there's a big basin of water and you take a bowl and kind of force all the stuff in. So
I don't think
I've
ever
ever
talked about flushing toilet water on stage at the conference.
There's photos on our Flickr photo stream as well.
Think about this for entrepreneurs, right?
And I would time my meals and things like that just to make sure
So
that
absolute
I'm back at
dedication.
the hotel.
Well, weren't you also sort of sleeping on the factory floor and waking up every time there was a batch to actually figure out if the quality of the batch was actually appropriate?
Sleeping is probably overstated, but there is factory on. But I mean, absolute commitment. I think probably the ideal skill set, if you had to take an existing person from the company, would be in a role called an engineering program manager.
Mm-hmm.
They're sort of in the middle of it all, managing schedules, managing trade-offs. They understand the technical aspects, the business aspects, the production aspects. So I think EPMs at Apple or some of the large manufacturers are probably the best people to start harvesting.
And so you would bring them after raising the seed, after raising the A. What's the right sort of time frame I need to start from like other those guys?
Probably a B, because usually you want your founder to be able to take that role and lead it. Because I think at a hardware company as a scale, it's very important for the founders to understand. I think even more than a software company, every aspect of the business, because you hire the wrong ops people, hardware engineers, firmware engineers, etc.
If you have burning questions, we have mics. So we have mics at the back. If we'll have time for a couple of questions. We have one here.
So hardware is software is eating the world, right? And we're also seeing dematerialization of various things that used to happen in hardware coming onto software, especially with the M7 chipset on the iPhone 5S. So how do you see Fitbit playing in that world?
Yeah, so, on our engineering team, actually 2/3 of our engineers are software engineers and not hardware engineers. And, software is a key part of what we do in our differentiation. And I think the lack of focus on hardware is what allowed us to take over the category very quickly over the incumbents like the Garmin, even Omron, Polar, etc. Because their emphasis had always been on hardware, and they gave software a short shrift. Again, this whole category from what's on smartphones to what's on wearables to what's on other dedicated devices. I don't know how it's going to play out in the next several years. Again, I don't think there's going to be a single winning paradigm, form factor, etc. I think there's going to be a lot of individual choices, and part of the product challenge at Fitbit is, how do you find the local maximums that are big enough? And I think there's going to be multiple of them, and it's our job. And that's why investors bet on us, is our ability to find all those local maximums, and then layer on top marketing, distribution, and support, because product's just one aspect of that.
And now people are very happy to use an iPhone app to actually track, their activity and their steps, and that's okay. The point is, if you are really sort of committed to, improving your health and so forth, this is the kind of device and the kind of behavior change that is required.
Yeah, and I think people always have when people comment on the competitive aspect of the category, they always take a very static view. It's like, oh, we'll take a look at what's happening today and kind of extrapolate out. But any technology company that doesn't look at the current competitive situation and technology developments on the horizon and adapt their product roadmap is kind of stupid. I mean, you've got to always assume that companies aren't stupid. They know what's happening, and they're making the necessary steps to evolve the product roadmap over the next few years.
Question here?
Yes. Hi, my name is Wayne Sutton. I'm organizing the world's first quantified run in San Francisco in the summer. And my question is about how do you determine feature requests? Just in the CES, I saw a lot of different wearable devices. Garmin has a new one coming out, and there's reports saying that by 2017, we'll be seeing augmented and embedded, different type of wearable devices that people can basically fit into and so forth. And I had a Fitbit for us, and I ride a motorcycle and it fell off. And I was thinking that it would be great that if the Fitbit had features like the iPhone, or say find my iPhone, because the GPS sensor in it, say find my Fitbit, so forth. So how do you determine feature requests in your roadmap?
You just did.
You know, the forums are a good way to submit feature requests, and we actually put a new forum software that allows users to vote. It's kind of basic, but you know, we've actually kind of all of our ideas up to this point have been pretty much internally generated, but all of our product managers and myself now look at the forums and see what improvements we need to make. On the implantables, I know Brad Feld's always been a big fan of, hey, when are you going to come up with an implantable device? But you know, whenever something involves the FDA, it's you know, you always got to be a little careful.
And I think, so there's where's my Fitbit, but also tell me when I left my Fitbit at home. Because you go out and, you know, you're sort of running, walking, whatever, you've done 10,000 steps and then you figure out that's Fitbit is at home.
There's actually a Bluetooth energy finder app on iTunes that you can download. And you actually have people hunt their Fitbit down in their house. So it gives you the DB. So.
One last question. Well, the mics, okay, here, sorry.
Can you talk a little bit about how you built distribution and how you dealt with at-store education?
Yeah, so distribution happened gradually over time. So right now, we're at about 30,000 stores in 28 countries, and that type of distribution has taken 4 years to build up. In 2009, actually, when we started shipping product, Best Buy reached out to us, and they were going to remove the DVD section of their stores, and they were looking for a replacement category, and health and fitness was one of them. And so we piloted our product in 4 of their stores. The pilot went well. We then moved 40 stores, and then gradually moved 650 of their stores. So it's really been taking each success. So we did well at Best Buy, we did well at Amazon. You could take those results and show them to other retailers. Go into tests and trials, there, succeed again. So I don't think there's a magical instant answer. I think most companies, it's going to take many, many years to build up distribution. And it's even more challenging if the category is not established. It's kind of a double-edged sword. Obviously, it's much easier to break in, much easier to convince retailers if you fit into an existing category, but an existing category will already have a ton of incumbents. So for instance, 5 years ago, GPS portable navigation devices were hot in this established category, but it would have been impossible for a new startup, short of some revolutionary feature functionality to break into that category. In a new emerging category, it's obviously much easier, but you have the challenges of the retailer doesn't quite know how to prioritize this category. How do consumers even know the benefits of this category? How do you explain it? Right in the beginning, connected fitness devices wasn't something that retailers and consumers were very familiar with. So we had to do strategies like, people love Apple packaging. There's literally nothing on the box. But if you're trying to educate people about a new product and its benefits, that's not necessarily the packaging strategy you can take. So you have to put a lot of explanatory text on the box. But it might not make the packaging look very sexy or very cool. So these are all trade-offs that you have to make.
And when you get going on the distribution, to start with Amazon, Target, Best Buy, or to try smaller outfits, regional ones, so that you can actually do some tests?
It depends. I mean, I know GoPro started off with mom and pop surf shops, bike shops, etc. And it's worked out really well for them. And that's actually a great distribution channel because it's so fragmented that it's really hard for someone like a Samsung or Sony to really get in there and dislodge GoPro. We took more of a national account strategy. So we have a small number of large national retailers that we focus on. And the reason we took that is because if you have a small number of key national accounts, it's much easier to make sure that everyone's retailing the product at pretty much the same price. If you have a lot of mom and pops, it's Joe's Surf Shop. If he wants a discount, the GoPro camera 20% off, and there's 100,000 Joe's Surf Shops, it's really hard to like go after each Joe's surf shop and tell them, hey, look, why are you discounting this product? So for our own channel management, we focused on key national account strategy. Big box retailers like Target and Walmart are probably places you want to go later, especially if it's a new category, because they don't typically offer product companies the opportunity to explain a product.
Which is great. We're out of time. It's going quickly, so I hope this was useful to you guys, and good luck to wannabe hardware entrepreneurs. It's not as scary as it sounds, or as it was many years ago, but manufacturing is a bitch. Remember that. Thank you, James.
Thanks.